We're going to work on part 5 of Federalist number 9. This is the third paragraph, but it is not to be denied that the portraits they have sketched of Republican government were two just copies of the original from which they were taken. If it had been found impracticable to have devised models of a more perfect structure, the enlightened friends to liberty would have been obliged to abandon the cause of that species of government as indefensible. He's mentioning indirectly that some of these people who criticize the Constitution because they say the Republican form of government that you're trying to establish in the United States can only work for a homogeneous culture, for a small place, a small area, that people are very similar, maybe the same religion, the same traditions, the same ethnic background, the same race. And here he's about to say something that is extremely fascinating. He says, the science of politics, however, like most other sciences, has received great improvement. He says, we are not stupid. Human beings have learned the new science of politics. They just don't look at the world like it was 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 300 years ago, in 300 or 400 years ago, towards the late medieval Europe. Things have changed. And the reason he says that, and you will see the language he speaks, they're talking about the world of science, the new astronomy, things that are, the scientists that are finding things, discovering things in natural sciences, are saying we're learning everything. We're learning things that are new, like we have never done before. So the science of politics has changed too. Okay? The efficacy of various principles is now well understood, which were either not known at all or imperfectly known to the ancients. There are things that we're just finding out. Some of these things were not known at all or a little bit to the previous generations, to people who lived 2,000-3,000 years ago too. The regular distribution of power into distinct departments. Here's the most important part. The regular distribution of power into distinct departments. What does he say? Distinct departments. He's talking about the 3 branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. And then he uses the word regular distribution. In other words, their election comes at a known cycle. They just can't sit there and say, I'm going to be your representative forever. We have devised, we have shaped, we have formed a plan where you know somebody is going to be in office, out of office, at what time. So these are when the elections are. And then he says the introduction of legislative balances and checks. Even within legislature, within the Congress, you have the House of Representatives and the Senate. They check each other. If House of Representatives gets out of hand, the senators who serve for a longer term, who are supposed to be a little older, more experienced, wiser, they will be a check and balance the system. Another thing that he says, the institution of courts composed of judges holding their offices during good behavior. In other words, these federal judges, there will be judges for the federal union, these will serve, some of them, for life, as long as they're healthy, as long as during good behavior. as long as they don't do anything criminal or they don't do really something really, really bad, ethically bad. So he says, this is another important thing. Independent judiciary, okay? They are not at the whim of the executive. They are not, this judiciary, these judges are not at the whim of the legislature. In other words, they don't care if what they're going to rule is going to upset the executive or the legislature, because they can't throw them out. And as we'll see in a few papers, they cannot change their salaries. So these judges are independent. So he says, all these great things are really the new science of politics. We have put it to use, and this is one of the greatest things that anybody has put as a structure of a government. Then he says, these are wholly new discoveries, or have made their principal progress towards perfection in modern times. He even calls these discoveries. They are means and powerful means by which the excellencies of republican government may be retained and its imperfections lessened or avoided. So this is a great experiment. We already know that we might make mistakes. And he is saying that even if we make mistakes, we're going to learn from this experiment as we go along and lessen the damage that can be done. We learn from it. So we're not gods. This is another great sentence. He's already saying that we have done a wise job, as wise as humanly possible. But if we make mistakes, we're going to try to learn from them and lessen the imperfections. Lessen, L-E-S-S-E-N, or avoid it, make it minimal, or just not make it again. To this catalog of circumstances that tend to the amelioration of popular system of civil government, I shall venture, however novel it may appear to some, to add one more, on a principle which has been made the foundation of an objection to the new Constitution. He says all these new, novel things that we have shaped this new Constitution out of, but these are the wisest thing that we have done. We've added even one thing that is extremely new, and he even puts it in large print, and that is the enlargement of the orbit within which such systems are to revolve. Number one, he uses the orbit, again a reference to the discoveries in the motion of planets that Newton, Galileo, Kepler, all these great minds had done. He says there are certain things that we are starting to know. We are not stupid. We're creative human beings. We've learned that there are certain things that if you learn it, the idea, the laws, and the rules will apply to other things. He says we've learned from it, and another thing we've done, we've enlarged the orbit. In other words, Montesquieu, the famous French person that they refer to quite a bit because of his book on the spirit of the laws. We'll talk a lot about Montesquieu. He says, Montesquieu, everybody says Montesquieu said that republics are only formed and work well in small areas. People that have the same culture, the same climate, this or that, but specifically small area of land. And he says, no, we've just made a new discovery, and we will talk about it. We've enlarged the orbit. This system of government is going to be a republic for a huge, huge area, and we will show you in the next few articles how we're going to manage to do that. Okay, I will finish this paragraph in the next video, But I put this book, I know it's going to be hard for you to read it. It's a Global Dialogue on Federalism, Volume 1. And I believe there are 10 books in this series. I just wanted to show you this. This is on comparative federalism. Our task is to learn as much as we can. I'm talking, when I say our task, I mean this generation, the next generation, eventually the generation that is going to write this blueprint for federalism for planet. Want to study the American federal system, Canadian experiment that European Union is ongoing, the ongoing experiment of European Union, and learn from it, and eventually get together and write this blueprint. So I don't want you to think that all we're doing is just going to study the American system by itself. No, I say American system has probably the greatest thing to offer to us, then after that the Canadian federalism. But in these books, they have talked about federalism in different countries. They've kind of compared them, and then one can go more in depth and read more articles, and also just learn more in general. I personally myself learn. Sometimes if there's like a professor that's in charge of like an editor or something, I write to them, I ask questions. They've been kind enough to offer books, or sometimes they make suggestions. So we can just go along and learn, and we can create this new science. We can create this, expand this idea of federalism a little bit more, a little better. We are not stupid. We can learn even from the past, even more than the founders of the United States did, other founders, and apply it to unite in the future and prosper and live in a better world ourselves and make it better for the next generations.